Um, and I want to now recognize or flip it, if you will, back to my good friend from the Virgin Islands.
I want to thank you, Mr. Johnson, for helping to clarify some of the important areas that are provided for in the Affordable Care Act. You know, everyone is entitled to their own opinions, but not everyone is entitled to creating their own facts. And I think what we're hearing tonight are the facts. I'd like to yield now 5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
I thank the gentlelady. It's a pleasure to be able to join my colleagues on the floor, including Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York, who we'll have the opportunity to hear from. And I thank Dr. Christensen for your continued leadership, and my colleague on Judiciary Committee. We had the opportunity to contribute to the debate today. The Judiciary Committee has as its jurisdiction the Constitution, and our friends on the other side of the aisle keep talking about that this is unconstitutional. It baffles me and almost frustrates me, because I'm trying to grab hold to what the argument is, particularly since we have had Medicare by the federal government since 1965, and it has withstood any constitutional challenge, and that was implemented under the Commerce Act. But frankly, if we have an argument to make on the Constitution, I will share with you why this is clearly a constitutional bill, because we are actually denying people both due process and equal protection under the law under the present system, because we have a nation that is divided between the haves and have-nots. 40 million plus, 44 million, now I hear 32 million persons were uninsured. That's what grabbed our attention. Those people did not have access to health care. That clearly, if you look at the Constitution that says that the 14th Amendment says equal protection under the law, all people treated equally, and the 5th Amendment says can't deprive someone of life or liberty without due process. Well, I can tell you, over the time that we debated this bill, we saw the numbers of people who actually died because they could not get access to health care. We were reminded of our good colleague, Congressman Cummings, who told the story over and over again of a young teenager, 12 or 13-year-old boy, African-American boy, who had an abscess, a tooth abscess, and clearly could have been saved. His life is before him. But he died because his mother did not have insurance, or did not have access to go anywhere to have this particular health matter taken care of. It became a crisis, and he died. So I want to say to my friends, these are the basic points that I want to raise today while I discuss this question of the 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment. First of all, you hear the question of how offended people are. I don't want to be told to buy insurance. Why should I have to be forced to buy insurance? Well, as everyone knows, there is a 10th Amendment that says what is not left to the federal government is given to the states. States require you to have auto insurance. If you do not have it, you are fined. You get a ticket, because they have calculated that the burden of not having health insurance is too great to bear. And so when we think of people not having health insurance because they don't have access, we have determined that the burden is too great to bear. $143 billion if this bill is repealed right away, and $1 trillion over 20 years that we will lose, or the deficit will be built. And I would imagine it might be more if you determine the people that will be uninsured who will go onto the county system. Does everybody know in these districts around the nation who are complaining about this bill that your hospitals, your county hospitals that are burdening your local taxpayers, will be actually compensated for uncompensated care? I don't know about anyone here, but I can tell you my hospitals are jumping for joy. And so I just want to point this out. Children with pre-existing conditions are denied coverage. That is the sickle cell child. That's the individual with heart disease. We determined in our Democratic Policy and Steering Committee that children are the greatest who have the possibility of dying because of lack of coverage. And so all of these children, asthma, parents who have children with asthma, they're born and they are babies with asthma. Do you realize they cannot or could not get insurance even on their parents' insurance? Asthma. How many children have died with asthma, particularly in the minority community, where we have been subjected to poor quality living conditions, maybe the air quality because of where we live, industrial waste, or maybe it is because of the quality of the house that you're in, asbestos, other ailments that create conditions that cause respiratory illnesses in children. Those are respiratory illnesses. Young people aged 26, a young man by the name of Andrew today said he's been working very hard. He graduated from college, but unfortunately the job that he had offered to him has been pushed back because of the economy. He is working to get more experience as an intern with no compensation. His family cannot afford to keep him on, to pay for independent insurance at this point. But yet he is being constructive, and he can be constructive because he can be on his parents' insurance. Pregnant women and breast and prostate cancer patients, in particular African American women and minority women, have a devastating form of breast cancer. My father had prostate cancer, and at the age that he was and the atmosphere that we were in and the medical access that he had at that time, one, he didn't tell the family. Two, we were uninformed about this thing called prostate cancer, and we didn't find out about it until it had metastasized. My father actually had lung cancer and brain cancer. There's a statistic, an African-American male over 65 that did not have the proper access to health care to be able to catch his prostate cancer. Now this bill will provide for preventative care so that members, no matter what economic station you're in or status you're in, you have the ability to access health care, meaning you could go to a community health clinic or the community health centers, or you may be able to buy your own health insurance at the rate and the amount you can. There is a complaint here, as I said, about lacking the ability or not wanting to buy health insurance. Well, I would argue to that person the argument I made about the 10th Amendment and automobile insurance, but I also argue, would you rather have these individuals die or burden the massive public health system, or would you rather have them have access to be healthy as opposed to be sick? Then something has been said, job-killing bill. And one of the points that the Republicans make is 650,000 jobs lost. They are not telling the accurate story. The 650,000 jobs lost are people deciding not to work or to work less because they now have the ability to get their own insurance that is not tied to a job through the exchange. That's the accuracy of it. It's voluntary separation from a job because I am independent now to be able to go into business, to be a sole entrepreneur, sole proprietor, and still have my insurance. And so these people would be immediately thrown off because pregnant women will be considered a pre-existing disease, breast cancer obviously one of the more devastating diseases, prostate cancer, and you know what else? Heart disease, which kills or has 43 million women today living with heart disease, some of whom do not know it because they do not have preventative care. And then our seniors have been frightened by death panels. Seniors, let me simply say to you, there will be living panels because you will get a 50% discount on your donut hole process and brand name prescription drugs. But more importantly, you'll be able to have a primary care doctor. You'll have community health clinics you can go to. You'll have what we call a medical home, so you won't have to be worrying about who is my doctor. You'll have a consistent doctor, maybe even electronic records. Particularly hard hit are minority seniors or seniors in rural areas where hospitals are not even. But if they can go to a community health clinic that can diagnose them so they don't have to go to an ER or be helicoptered to a major city because they've reached a crisis. Seniors, this is a living bill for you. And then, of course, this whole question of the deficit, I've already mentioned, but this idea of small businesses. Let me tell you that small businesses are jumping for joy. Dr. Odetta Cohen today said to us that she is glad that her pediatric practice will be able to get tax credits for her employees to provide health care, and that she will be able to add another nurse practitioner just because this bill provides for small businesses. So I can only say that this whole question of job loss is shaky. The whole question of the Constitution is shakier. And I conclude by saying this, and I will be on the floor again tomorrow. The Constitution has been misused in this debate. I beg of people to get the Constitution. It is quite the opposite. H.R. 2 is unconstitutional because it creates an unequal system in America, a system of unequalness as relates to health care. We've lived that way, but we have not been able to get those who've been most deprived to take this case up all the way to the Supreme Court. Why did I not have health insurance? Why does my neighbor have it and I don't have it? Well, we are now equalizing with the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. We're giving you the protection of the Constitution to the 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment of due process and equal protection. I can't imagine a better way to value America than to say that all of us deserve the dignity of our flag and our Constitution. I thank the gentlelady for her leadership. Dr. Christensen, and I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, and thank you for tying it to the constitutional issues, because we're going to be asked to provide constitutional references for every legislation that we introduce, and the constitutional issue has been raised over and over again, and I thank you for addressing that in your remarks. And now I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Congressman Meeks.
I want to thank the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands. I also want to thank the gentlelady from Houston, Texas, Sheila Jackson Lee, for that excellent statement on the Constitution and the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment. I'm so serious about this issue that on this night, when I don't have much of a voice, it is important to talk about what is really going on here. When you think about the Constitution, you know, the first thing that we were doing when we came back to the 112th was the reading of the Constitution. The Constitution was really put in place to help and protect Americans. It's one thing to read the Constitution. It's another thing to live the Constitution. I think the gentlelady put out the facts clearly, that under the 14th and the 5th Amendments, this is constitutional. I think that is also clearly that what the Constitution and what the individuals who wrote in 1787, it was a committee of the Federal Convention, that it should remind us that the sacred text employs and empowers us to provide for and protect the American people. What is the most precious thing that one has? Is it money? What is the most precious thing? It's called life. Without life, what do we have? And what is the most important thing in living a good life? It's health. So wouldn't it seem that what would be the most appropriate thing to do is that we provide health care for Americans? Well, it's without question, I think that we can agree, whether we're Democrat or Republican, we believe that we have the best country on the planet and the history of the planet. But look at the blemish that history will record on our great nation if we do not provide or give access to health care for all Americans. This is a struggle that we have had for debate after debate after debate, from president before president before president. And finally, this Congress did come together, and the 111th Congress, and said we're going to provide health care to 95% of all Americans. No, we're not perfect. In fact, the matter is, I don't know any bill that has ever been passed in any legislative body that is perfect. We've got to work. In fact, we talk about our union to make it a more better union. The health care reform bill clearly does that. Now, the logic to come and to repeal the whole bill confuses me. For even the Constitution of the United States of America was not a perfect document. Clearly, for those of us who happen to be African Americans, When the Founding Fathers wrote it, they said we were only 3/5 of a human being. Clearly, the Constitution to give women the right to vote. The document itself, as it was initially written, was flawed. But we as a nation didn't say, come and strike the entire Constitution. Repeal the Constitution. That's not what was done. What we did was we said, let's fix it. Let's look and see where we can agree upon to amend it. And in fact, there was a small debate on the floor right here. Which Constitution would be read? Would it be the amended version? And that's what we talked about, the amended version of the Constitution. That's what was read here. So where is the logic now, where we clearly have the law of the land to come and say, get rid of it all? You've clearly heard from the gentleman from Georgia and the others that have spoken this evening about making sure that there is no individual who's denied health care because of a pre-existing condition. This bill assures us that. If you have a child, under 26 years of age, not working, they can stay on their parents' health care. Seniors in this donut hole, we fix that. So now if you've got a serious problem that you want to negotiate and talk about that's within this bill, that's a problem, that's a flaw that needs to be amended, then I think that as a body, we can sit down and work together to get that done. And so I say, when I look at where we are, I ask my staff, for example, in just my little district in New York, the 6th Congressional District. Well, let me just end by saying this. Let's make sure that health care is not a privilege for a few, but a right for the many. Let us make sure that we do not destroy this great health care reform bill that's now law.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker,
Time
may I
has
ask
expired.
unanimous consent to insert into the record the statement of Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and unanimous consent to extend and revise the remarks this evening?
The gentlewoman's request will be covered by general leave.
Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
The following members be removed as co-sponsors of H.R. 61, Mr. Bilbrey, Mr. Cole, Mr. Jeff Duncan, Mr. Franks, Mr. Gibbs, Mr. Tom Graves, Mr. Klein, Mr. Lamborn, Ms. Loomis, and Mr. McHenry.
Without objection, so ordered.
Also, Mr. Speaker,
For what purpose does the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands seek recognition?
General leave to ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and add any extraneous material on the subject under consideration this evening.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
The House today wrapped up the first couple hours of debate on the health care legislation.